6,000 years ago, the Valkyrie Dominion sent a small ship to a blue planet called Earth. The ship stayed hidden in the clouds and watched the creatures below. These creatures were humans. They lived in small villages made of mud and stone. They used sharp rocks as tools. They worshipped the sun and the moon because they did not understand them. The Valkyrie observers wrote everything in their reports. They measured human intelligence. They studied human bodies. They watched humans fight each other with wooden spears and stone axes. The observers sent their findings back to the Dominion with a simple conclusion. These creatures were primitive and weak. They would be easy to conquer when the time came. The Dominion marked Earth for future harvesting and moved on to other matters. 6,000 years passed. The Valkyrie Dominion grew large and powerful. They conquered 87 different species across the galaxy. They ruled over 1,000 star systems. Their warships were feared throughout known space. No species had ever defeated them in battle. The Dominion believed they were the greatest civilization in existence. High Commander Zetheron was old even by Valkyrie standards. His gray skin had grown pale with age, and the membrane that covered his 3 eyes had become thin. But his mind was still sharp, and his reputation was legendary. He had led the conquest of 12 worlds. He had never known defeat. Now he stood on the command deck of his greatest warship, the Eternal Supremacy. The ship was massive, stretching 5 kilometers from front to back. It carried weapons that could crack planets open like eggs. Behind it flew 3,000 more warships, each one capable of destroying cities in seconds. They had come to claim Earth. Zetheron looked at the ancient data files on his display screen. He saw images of humans living in caves. He read reports about their short lifespans and their constant tribal wars. He studied their primitive weapons and their simple beliefs. Such fragile creatures, he said to his second officer, a younger Valkyrie named Kethva. It is almost sad that we must harvest them. Kethva nodded in agreement. They have had 6,000 years to develop, High Commander. But species like this rarely advance quickly. They are probably still fighting with metal swords by now. Zetheron made a sound that passed for laughter among his kind. Perhaps they have discovered gunpowder. How frightening for us. The fleet moved through the darkness of space toward the third planet from the yellow sun. Sensors showed the planet clearly now. It was blue and green and white, covered in water and land and clouds. It looked peaceful from this distance. "We are in position," announced the navigation officer. "All ships report ready." Zetheron straightened his uniform and prepared to deliver the standard conquest message. He had spoken these words many times before. Every species reacted the same way. First came confusion, then fear, then desperate attempts to fight, and finally surrender. It was always the same. "Open a communication channel," he ordered. "All frequencies. Make sure they hear this clearly." The communication officer pressed several buttons. "Channel open, High Commander." Zetheron spoke in a loud, clear voice. The Dominion's translation technology would convert his words into whatever language the humans used. Primitive species of the third planet. "I am High Commander Zetheron of the Valkyrie Dominion. Your world now belongs to us. You have 1 planetary rotation to surrender unconditionally. All humans will present themselves for processing. Any resistance will result in the complete extinction of your species. This is not a negotiation. This is your only warning." He made a cutting gesture, and the communication officer ended the transmission. "Now we wait," Zetheron said. He settled into his command chair and prepared for the usual chaos. Within hours, he expected to see panicked messages from human leaders. They would beg for mercy. They would offer anything to survive. Some would try to fight, and they would die quickly. The rest would surrender. 1 hour passed. Then 2. Then 3. Kethva checked the communication systems. "Hi, Commander. I am not detecting any response from the planet." "Give them time," Zetheron said. "They are probably still trying to understand what is happening. Their primitive minds need time to process such information." More hours passed. The fleet hung in space like a cloud of metal death, waiting for the terror to begin. But no terror came. After 14 hours of complete silence, a single transmission finally arrived from Earth. The communication officer looked confused as he processed it. "Hi, Commander," he said slowly. "We have received a response. Display it." The message appeared on the main view screen. It was short. Just one word in the Velkari language. The translation matrix identified it as something between "acknowledged" and "finally." Zetheron stared at the word for a long moment. This was not right. This was not how conquered species behaved. Where was the panic? Where were the desperate pleas for mercy? "That is their entire response?" he asked. "Yes, High Commander. Just this one word." Kethva's membrane flickered with confusion and something else. Something that might have been the beginning of worry. "High Commander, they do not seem alarmed by our presence." Perhaps they did not understand the message? "The translation was perfect," Zetheron said. They understood. He leaned forward in his chair and studied the blue planet on his view screen. For the first time in his long career, he felt something unfamiliar. It was a small feeling, barely noticeable, like a cold wind touching the back of his neck. He did not recognize the feeling because he had never experienced it before. It was doubt. "Scan the planet," he ordered. "Full sensor sweep. I want to know everything about their defensive capabilities." The sensor officer worked quickly and then stopped. His membrane went pale. "High Commander, there is a problem with the sensors." "What kind of problem?" "They are being blocked. Something on the planet is preventing us from scanning anything below the cloud layer. I have never seen technology capable of this." The cold feeling grew stronger. Zetheron looked at the peaceful blue world floating in the darkness of space. It looked exactly like the ancient records had shown. But something had changed. Something was different. And for the first time in his life, High Commander Zetheron began to wonder if the Dominion had made a terrible mistake. "Prepare the fleet for battle positions," he ordered quietly, "and keep trying to break through their sensor blocking." The ancient data files had promised an easy conquest. But those files were 6,000 years old. A lot can change in 6,000 years. Deep beneath the mountains of what was once called Switzerland, the United Earth Council gathered in their most secure meeting chamber. The room was carved from solid rock and protected by shields that could survive a nuclear explosion. Holographic displays covered every wall, showing the alien fleet hanging in space above their world. Ambassador Helena Chen stood at the center of the room. She was a tall woman with gray hair and calm eyes. She had spent 40 years negotiating with difficult people, and she had never lost her patience. Now she faced the greatest challenge of her career, and she felt strangely peaceful. "Ladies and gentlemen," she said to the assembled leaders, "our visitors have finally arrived." Defense Minister James Okonkwo laughed out loud. He was a large man with a deep voice and a reputation for speaking his mind. 6,000 years late for dinner. Someone should teach these aliens about keeping appointments. A few other council members smiled at the joke. There was tension in the room, but it was not the tension of fear. It was the tension of anticipation. They had been waiting for this moment for a very long time. Chun pulled up the alien transmission on the main display. "They call themselves the Velkari Dominion. They have given us 1 day to surrender. They expect us to be terrified. Are we terrified?" asked Admiral Yuki Tanaka, commander of Earth's defense forces. "We are curious," Chung replied. Our deep space monitoring stations detected their faster-than-light signatures 3 weeks ago. We have had plenty of time to prepare. 3 weeks. That was how long humanity had known the aliens were coming. In those 3 weeks, Earth's defense network had quietly activated. Ships that normally stayed hidden had moved into position. Weapons that the public did not know existed had been armed and ready. But the preparations had really begun much earlier than 3 weeks ago. Humanity had suspected for centuries that they were not alone in the universe. They had found evidence of alien observation on Earth dating back thousands of years. Strange materials that did not match anything natural. Energy signatures that could not be explained. Traces of technology far beyond anything humans had built at the time. Someone had been watching them. And humanity had decided to be ready when the Watchers returned. Minister Okonkwo walked to a different display and pulled up a comparison chart. On one side was an image from the alien data files, recovered decades ago from one of their abandoned observation drones. It showed human civilization 6,000 years ago. Mud houses, stone tools, primitive agriculture. On the other side was an image of humanity today. They think we still look like this, Okonkwo said, pointing to the ancient image. They have no idea what we have become. The second image showed things that would have seemed like magic to humans of 6,000 years ago. Cities that floated in the sky. Ships that could cross the solar system in hours. Colonies on Mars, Europa, and Titan. Stations hidden in the asteroid belt. Things built in the dark spaces between planets that even most Earth citizens did not know about. In 6,000 years, humanity had transformed itself completely. The change had not been peaceful or easy. Humans had spent those 6,000 years fighting each other with every weapon they could imagine. They had survived world wars. They had survived nuclear weapons. They had survived biological plagues and climate disasters and artificial intelligence rebellions. Each crisis had pushed them to evolve, to adapt, to become stronger. Other species in the galaxy had grown powerful through peace and stability. The Valkyrie Dominion had known 10,000 years of uninterrupted progress, slowly building their empire, one conquered world at a time. Humanity had taken a different path. They had forged themselves in fire and blood. Every generation had faced extinction, and every generation had found a way to survive. They had become hard in ways that peaceful species could never understand. Admiral Tanaka stepped forward. The alien fleet consists of approximately 3,000 warships. The largest is about 5 kilometers long. Based on our analysis of their energy signatures and weapon systems, they are using technology roughly equivalent to what we had 400 years ago. 400 years behind us, Chun repeated. That is quite a gap. It is enough, Tanaka said simply. Chun nodded slowly. She looked around the room at the faces of Earth's leaders. She saw no fear in their eyes. She saw determination and confidence and perhaps a little sadness. Humanity had hoped that first contact with aliens would be peaceful. They had dreamed of meeting wise species who would share knowledge and friendship. Instead, they had met conquerors who saw them as cattle to be harvested. What are our options? Chun asked. Tanaka pulled up a tactical display. Option 1. We destroy their entire fleet in approximately 6 minutes. Our orbital defense platforms alone could accomplish this. We would suffer 0 casualties. And option 2? We attempt diplomacy first. We show them what they are dealing with and give them a chance to withdraw peacefully. Chun considered both options carefully. Destroying the alien fleet would be easy. Almost too easy. But it would also mean killing millions of living beings who were simply following orders. It would mean starting humanity's relationship with the wider galaxy through violence. There had been enough violence in human history. Perhaps it was time to try something different. Send a response to the alien commander, Chun said finally. One word only. Make it clear that we received their message and we are not afraid. Just one word? Asked the communications officer. Yes, something that translates to acknowledged or finally. Let them wonder what it means. The message was sent. 14 hours later, Chum sent a second transmission. This one was longer and more formal. It was an invitation. "Hi, Commander Zetheron," she said into the recording device. "Humanity welcomes you to our solar system. We have received your declaration of war and wish to respond properly. We invite you to send a small fleet to the following coordinates for a demonstration of mutual capabilities. This will help both sides understand what we are dealing with. We look forward to meeting you." She ended the recording and sent it into space. Minister Okonko raised an eyebrow. "A demonstration of capabilities? That sounds almost friendly." "It is friendly," Chum replied. "We are giving them a chance to understand their situation before they do something foolish. We are giving them the opportunity to survive. And if they refuse to understand?" Chum's calm eyes grew cold for just a moment. "Then we will demonstrate more directly. But I hope it does not come to that. I really do." She turned back to the holographic display showing the alien fleet. 3,000 warships, each one carrying thousands of soldiers who believed they were about to conquer a primitive species. They were about to receive the most important lesson of their lives. Humanity was no longer primitive. Humanity was no longer weak. And humanity had learned, through thousands of years of bitter experience, exactly how to deal with those who came to destroy them. The only question was whether the Volcari were smart enough to recognize the truth before it was too late. High Commander Zetheron read the human message 3 times before he believed what he was seeing. These creatures were not begging for mercy. They were not surrendering. They were inviting him to a demonstration of capabilities, as if they were equals meeting for a friendly competition. The arrogance was almost impressive. "They are either very stupid or very confident," said Kethva, studying the message on his own screen. "I cannot decide which." "It does not matter," Zetheron replied. "Either way, they need to learn their place. Send a squadron to these coordinates. 50 warships should be enough to remind them what they are dealing with." Kethva hesitated. "High Commander, perhaps we should send a larger force. Something about this situation feels wrong." Zetheron waved away the concern. 50 warships could destroy a small moon. That is more than enough to deal with whatever primitive defense these humans have prepared. Send the squadron. The 50 warships separated from the main fleet and moved toward the coordinates the humans had provided. Each ship was a kilometer long, bristling with weapons that could turn cities into ash. Together, they represented enough firepower to conquer most civilizations in the galaxy. Squadron. Commander Velmoth stood on the bridge of his ship, watching the destination coordinates grow closer. He was younger than Zetheron, but equally confident. He had never lost a battle in his life. "Anything on sensors?" he asked. "Just one small vessel, Commander. It appears to be waiting for us at the designated location." Velmoth laughed. "One vessel? They send one vessel to face 50 warships? These humans are even more foolish than I expected." The squadron dropped out of faster-than-light travel and found themselves facing the human ship. Velmoth stared at it through the main view screen and felt his confidence grow even stronger. The human vessel was tiny, perhaps 200 meters long, barely a fifth the size of his own ship. It was painted matte black and shaped like a smooth oval, with no visible weapons or engines. It looked like a toy compared to the massive warships surrounding it. "Scan it," Velmoth ordered. "Unable to scan, Commander. Our sensors cannot penetrate its hull. But based on its size, it cannot possibly carry any significant weapons." Velmoth nodded. The humans were bluffing. They had sent this one pathetic ship hoping to intimidate the Valkyrie through mystery and confidence. It was a desperate gamble, and it would not work. "Open a communication channel," he ordered. The channel crackled to life, and a calm human voice filled the bridge. It was a woman's voice, speaking perfect Valkyrie with no trace of accent. "Welcome to the demonstration area, Squadron Commander. Thank you for accepting our invitation." Velma sneered at the screen. "You are welcome to surrender now, human. Perhaps we will make your death quick." "That is very kind of you," the voice replied, sounding almost amused. "But we did not come here to surrender. We came here to show you something important. Please observe carefully. I have seen enough. All ships, target that vessel. Fire at will." 50 warships opened fire simultaneously. Plasma cannons unleashed streams of superheated energy. Kinetic weapons launched metal projectiles at incredible speeds. 3 ships fired antimatter torpedoes, weapons so powerful that they were normally reserved for destroying planets. The combined firepower was enough to vaporize a small asteroid. It should have turned the human ship into scattered atoms, floating in the void, but it did not. The weapon's fire struck something invisible around the human vessel. There was a brief flash of light, and then nothing. The plasma dissipated. The projectiles stopped in mid-flight and fell away. The antimatter torpedoes simply vanished, their destructive energy absorbed by whatever shield the humans had created. The human ship remained completely untouched. It had not moved even a centimeter. Velmoth stared at his view screen in disbelief. "That is impossible. Fire again. All weapons. Maximum power." The ships fired again. And again. For 3 full minutes, they unleashed everything they had against the tiny black vessel. The space around it turned white with weapon fire. When the firing stopped, the human ship floated exactly where it had been before. There was not a single scratch on its hull. The calm voice returned. "That was your weapons test. As you can see, your technology is unable to harm us. Now, here is ours." The human vessel moved. But it did not move like any ship Velmoth had ever seen. It did not accelerate or turn, or follow any normal path of motion. It simply flickered, and suddenly it was somewhere else. Then it flickered again, and it was somewhere else entirely. Within seconds, the ship seemed to be everywhere at once. It appeared behind the squadron, then beside them, then above them, then below. It left afterimages in space like a strobe light, moving faster than Velmoth's eyes could follow. Then it stopped, hovering directly in front of his ship. "Watch carefully," the voice said. The human vessel fired a single beam of light. But it was not ordinary light. It was something else entirely, something that bent and twisted in ways that made Velmoth's eyes hurt to look at. The beam passed through 37 Valkyrie warships simultaneously. It did not hit them one at a time. It hit all of them at once, as if space itself had folded to allow a single shot to strike multiple targets. The 37 ships did not explode. Explosions would have been merciful. Instead, they simply stopped existing. One moment they were there, filled with crew members and weapons and engines. The next moment, they were gone. Not destroyed, not damaged, just gone, as if they had never been built at all. Velmoth watched in horror as more than half his squadron vanished in less than a second. "The remaining vessels may return to your fleet," the human voice said. There was no anger in the tone, no hatred, no triumph. Just calm professionalism, like a teacher instructing a student. "We recommend that you reconsider your declaration of war. Humanity does not wish to destroy you, but we are fully capable of doing so if necessary." The communication channel closed. Velma stood frozen on his bridge, surrounded by officers who were too shocked to speak. 13 ships remained from his squadron of 50. 37 had been erased from existence by a single shot from a vessel they had thought was a joke. "Return to the fleet," he whispered. His voice was barely audible. "Maximum speed, now." The 13 surviving ships fled back toward the main fleet as fast as their engines could carry them. Behind them, the small black human vessel remained motionless in space. It made no attempt to follow or attack. It simply waited, as patient and calm as the voice that had spoken from within it. The demonstration was complete. Humanity had shown the Valkyrie exactly what they were dealing with. The only question now was whether the aliens were wise enough to understand the message. On the bridge of the human vessel, Captain Sarah Wells watched the alien ships retreat. She felt no satisfaction in what she had done. Killing was never something to celebrate, even when it was necessary. "Send a report to Ambassador Chun," she said quietly. "Tell her the demonstration was successful. The aliens know the truth now." She looked out at the stars and hoped the aliens would make the right choice. She hoped they would accept peace instead of choosing destruction. But if they chose wrong, humanity was ready for that too. They had been ready for 6,000 years. High Commander Zetharan watched the 13 surviving ships return to the fleet. He listened to Squadron Commander Velmuth describe what had happened. He saw the sensor recordings that showed 37 warships vanishing in the blink of an eye. And for the first time in his very long life, Zetharan felt real fear. His command deck had gone silent. Every officer stood frozen at their station, too shocked to move or speak. The confidence that had filled the fleet just hours ago had disappeared completely. In its place was something cold and terrible. The understanding that they had made a catastrophic mistake. "How is this possible?" Zetharan asked. His voice sounded strange to his own ears, weak and uncertain. "Our records showed them as primitives. They should still be building with stones and mud." His science officer, an elderly Valkyrie named Thresholka, worked frantically in her console. Her membrane had gone pale gray with stress. "I am analyzing the recordings now, High Commander. The weapon they used, I do not understand the physics behind it. It appears to manipulate space itself, folding multiple points into one to allow a single beam to strike multiple targets simultaneously. Can we defend against it?" Thresholka was silent for a long moment. When she spoke, her voice was barely a whisper. "No, High Commander, we cannot. Our shields are designed to stop energy and matter. This weapon does not destroy matter. It removes matter from existence entirely. There is no defense against something like that." Zetharan closed his eyes. 3,000 warships. Millions of soldiers. The largest invasion fleet the Dominion had assembled in centuries. And all of it was worthless against a species they had dismissed as primitive animals. "How did they advance so far?" he asked. "Our projections showed they should be barely capable of space travel by now. Instead, they have technology that exceeds ours by how much?" Thresholka consulted her calculations. "Based on their energy signatures and the capabilities they demonstrated, I estimate their technology is at least 400 years more advanced than ours. Possibly more. Our instruments cannot accurately measure it." 400 years, Kethva repeated in disbelief. "In 6,000 years, they surpassed 10,000 years of Valkyrie development. How is that possible?" Zetharan had been asking himself the same question. He pulled up the ancient observation files again and studied them carefully. Humans 6,000 years ago. Humans today. What had happened in between? The answer came to him slowly, and it was horrifying. "They fought," he said quietly. "They spent 6,000 years fighting each other." Kethva looked confused. Fighting each other? But that would slow their development, not accelerate it. No. Zetharan shook his head. "Think about it. The Dominion has known 10,000 years of peace. We conquered other species, but we never truly struggled. We never faced extinction. We never had to fight with everything we had just to survive." He pointed at the image of ancient humanity on his screen. These creatures were at war from the moment they first picked up a rock. They fought over food, over land, over beliefs, over power. Every generation faced enemies that wanted to destroy them. And every generation had to become stronger, smarter, more creative, just to survive. The truth was becoming clearer with each word. We advanced slowly because we had no reason to hurry. We were comfortable. We were safe. But humans were never safe. They were always one war away from extinction. So they evolved faster than any species we have ever encountered. Thresholka pulled up historical data from the observation files and cross-referenced it with current sensor readings. "High Commander, you may be correct. Human technological development shows an exponential curve. Each century brought more advancement than the previous century. In the last 500 years alone, they went from simple chemical rockets to faster-than-light travel, artificial intelligence, genetic engineering, and weapons that can manipulate the fabric of space itself. They were forged in fire," Zetheron said softly. "While we grew comfortable in our empire, they were burning and rebuilding themselves over and over again. Each war made them harder. Each crisis made them stronger." He looked at the peaceful blue planet on his view screen. It looked so calm, so harmless. But beneath that peaceful surface was a species that had survived thousands of years of self-inflicted apocalypses. A species that had learned to treat extinction as just another problem to solve. The Valkyrie had conquered 87 civilizations. Most of those civilizations had developed in peace, growing slowly and steadily until the Dominion arrived to harvest them. They had never faced real challenges. They had never needed to become dangerous. Humanity had faced challenges every single day of their existence. They had become the most dangerous thing in the galaxy, not because they wanted power, but because they had no other choice. "High Commander," an officer announced. "We are receiving another transmission from Earth." "Display it." Ambassador Chun's face appeared on the view screen. She looked calm and professional, as if she was discussing a business deal instead of the fate of two civilizations. "High Commander Zetheron," she said. "I hope the demonstration was educational. I want you to understand that humanity does not enjoy violence. We have seen too much of it in our own history. We would prefer peace." She paused, and her calm expression became something harder. "But we are also very good at violence. We have had 6,000 years of practice. If you continue this invasion, you will force us to use skills we would rather forget. Please do not make that necessary. What do you want?" Zetheron asked. "We want to talk. Not as conquerors and conquered, but as equals. Come to Earth, bring a small delegation. Let us discuss a different kind of relationship between our peoples." The transmission ended. Zetheran sat in silence for a long time. His officers waited for orders, but he had none to give. Everything he had believed about this mission had been wrong. The easy conquest had become a potential slaughter, with the Valkyrie as the victims instead of the victors. He thought about the Dominion. He thought about the High Council that had sent him here expecting triumph. He thought about what they would say when he returned with news of this disaster. But mostly, he thought about the millions of soldiers in his fleet. Good soldiers who had followed him into what they thought would be an easy victory. They did not deserve to die because their commanders had made a mistake 6,000 years ago. "Prepare a shuttle," he said finally. "I will go to Earth myself. I will meet these humans and hear what they have to say." Kethva stepped forward in alarm. "High Commander, that is too dangerous. They could capture you. They could kill you." Zetheron looked at his second officer with tired eyes. "They could destroy this entire fleet in minutes if they wanted to. If they wish me dead, I would already be dead. No, they want to talk. And talking is better than dying. He stood up from his command chair and walked toward the exit. At the door, he paused and looked back at his officers. I spent my whole life believing the Valkyrie were the greatest power in the galaxy, he said quietly. Today I learned that we are not. That is a painful lesson, but it is better to learn it now than to learn it through extinction. He left the bridge and walked toward the shuttle bay, preparing to meet the species that had proven everything he knew was wrong. Humanity was waiting. The shuttle carrying High Commander Zetheron descended through Earth's atmosphere, surrounded by a shimmering escort of human vessels. He watched through the window as clouds parted to reveal the planet below. Cities stretched across the landscape like glittering jewels. Towers reached toward the sky, connected by bridges that seemed to float on nothing. Ships of all sizes moved through the air in organized patterns, following invisible highways. This was not the primitive world his ancestors had observed. This was something else entirely. The shuttle landed on a platform high above a massive city. Zetheron stepped out and felt Earth's gravity pull at his body. The air smelled strange but clean. The sun was yellow and warm. Ambassador Helena Chun waited for him with a small group of human officials. She smiled and extended her hand in a gesture Zetheron had learned was a human greeting. "Welcome to Earth, High Commander," she said. "Thank you for accepting our invitation." Zetheron studied her carefully. She was old by human standards, her hair gray and her face lined with age. But her eyes were sharp and intelligent. This was not a weak creature. This was a leader. "You could have destroyed my fleet," he said. "You could have killed us all without losing a single ship. Why did you not?" Chun considered the question carefully before answering. "Because killing is easy, High Commander. We learned that lesson thousands of years ago. The harder choice is finding another way." She gestured for him to follow her into a large building. They walked through halls filled with art and light, past windows that showed the city spreading out in all directions. Humans moved around them, barely glancing at the alien in their midst. They did not seem afraid. "Your people are not worried about me," Zetheron observed. "Should they be? I came here to conquer your world. I came here to harvest your species." Chun nodded. "Yes, you did. But you failed. And now you are here to talk instead of fight. That is progress." They entered a conference room where other human leaders waited. Zetheron recognized military uniforms and formal clothing. These were the people who controlled Earth's defenses, the people who had decided not to destroy his fleet. For the next 6 hours, they talked. Zetheron learned things that shocked him. He learned that humanity had been preparing for alien contact for centuries. They had known something was watching them from the stars. They had found old observation probes and studied them carefully. They had built their defenses specifically for this moment, but they had also hoped for peace. They had hoped that when aliens finally came, they would come as friends instead of conquerors. They had been disappointed, but not surprised. "We understand conquest," Chun explained. "We did it to each other for thousands of years. We took lands and resources and people. We built empires and watched them fall. We learned, eventually, that there are better ways to live." "Better ways?" "Trade, cooperation, mutual benefit. It is slower than conquest, but it lasts longer. Empires built on force eventually collapse. Partnerships built on shared interest can survive forever." Zetheron thought about the Dominion. He thought about the 87 species they had conquered, working in their mines and factories, producing wealth for their masters. He had always believed this was the natural order of things. The strong ruled, and the weak served. But humanity had shown him a different truth. Humanity had become stronger than the Dominion not through conquest, but through struggle. They had not taken their power from others. They had earned it through thousands of years of pain and sacrifice. "What do you want from us?" he asked finally. Chun slid a document across the table. It was written in both human languages and Volcari script. A treaty, trade agreements, technology sharing, diplomatic relations, and one additional clause. Zetheron read the document carefully. Most of it was standard diplomatic language, the kind of agreement that equals might sign. But the final clause made him stop and read it 3 times. "You want to protect us? The galaxy is large, High Commander. The Valkyrie are not the only dangers out there. We have detected other civilizations, some of them much larger than your dominion. Some of them may not be friendly." Chun leaned forward, her eyes serious. "Humanity has decided that we will not be conquered by anyone. But we have also decided that we will not let others be conquered if we can prevent it. That includes you." Zetheron set down the document. The conqueror was being offered protection by the species he had come to conquer. It was humiliating. It was impossible. It was also, he realized slowly, the only real choice he had. The treaty was signed 3 days later. The Volcari Dominion agreed to trade agreements that would benefit both sides. They agreed to share technology and knowledge. They agreed to diplomatic relations that treated both species as equals. And they agreed to accept humanity's protection against external threats. The conquered had become the protector's dot as Zetheron prepared to leave Earth. Ambassador Chun came to see him one final time. She handed him a small device containing a personal message. "Read this when you return to your ship," she said, "and think about what it means." Zetheron took the device and boarded his shuttle. He watched Earth shrink below him as he rose through the atmosphere. He watched the beautiful blue planet become just another point of light among the stars. Only then did he play Chun's message. Her face appeared on the small screen, looking thoughtful and a little sad. "You are wondering why we did not destroy you," she said. "Why we offered peace instead of annihilation. The answer is simple. We have seen what happens when you answer extinction with extinction. We have done it to each other more times than we care to count. We learned, slowly and painfully, that survival is not enough. We want to be worthy of surviving." She paused, choosing her next words carefully. "Your people made a mistake today, but you also gave us something valuable. You gave us proof that we have come far enough to choose mercy when we could choose victory. Do not make us regret it." The message ended. Zetheron sat in silence as his shuttle docked with the Eternal Supremacy. He walked through the corridors of his great warship, past soldiers who looked at him with confusion and concern. They had come here expecting conquest. They were leaving with a treaty of equals. He entered his private quarters and sat alone in the darkness, thinking about everything that had happened. He thought about the Dominion and its long history of conquest. He thought about humanity and its long history of struggle. He thought about the future and what it might hold for both species. Finally, he made a decision. He would return to Dominion and tell the High Council everything. He would show them the recordings of human weapons that could erase ships from existence. He would explain the treaty and why it was the best possible outcome. Some would call him a coward. Some would call him a failure. But he would also deliver a warning that would be recorded and preserved for all future generations of Valkyrie to remember. Humanity was not to be conquered. Humanity was not to be threatened. Humanity was not to be underestimated. Humanity was to be watched, studied, and perhaps, in time, learned from. Because the universe had just become much more interesting. And the Valkyrie needed to understand that they were no longer the greatest power in the galaxy. That title now belonged to the small, fragile creatures from the third planet of an unremarkable yellow star. The creatures who had spent 6,000 years preparing to meet them. The creatures who had chosen peace when they could have chosen destruction. The creatures called humans, and as Zetharan's fleet turned away from Earth and began the long journey home, he found himself hoping that his people would be wise enough to honor the treaty, wise enough to learn from their former enemies, wise enough to become something better than they had been. Because if humanity could transform themselves from primitive cave dwellers into the most powerful species in the galaxy, perhaps the Valkyrie could transform too. Perhaps anyone could. That was the true lesson of Earth. Not the weapons or the technology or the power. The true lesson was that growth was always possible, no matter how far you had already come. Zetharan smiled to himself, a rare expression for his species. For the first time in his long life, he was looking forward to seeing what would happen next.